Ich begrüße Sie ganz herzlich zum heutigen TEWI-Kolloquium. Unsere heutige Sprecherin ist keine Mathematikerin. Verena Radinger-Peer von der BOKU spricht heute für uns über die Rolle von Universitäten in ländlichen Umgebungen, von der Rolle von dezentralen Universitäten. Und ich glaube, das betrifft uns alle. Und deshalb freuen wir uns sehr auf Ihren Vortrag.
Danke. Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. I also told Michaela, I hope that you are not expecting mathematical or statistical inputs from my side, as I will talk today about the multiple regional roles universities can play for their siting region. I am a regional planner, and right now a Hertha Fernberg grant holder, and I conducted case studies throughout Europe on the different roles universities can have for the region. And what I will present today is, on the one hand, a more theoretical approach to this regional role, but then of course also what is interesting, I assume for you, is empirical evidence and also a comparison to challenges the perhaps University of Klagenfurt is confronted with, and how other universities with same challenges have solved these issues, or what kind of strategies they have developed. I would like to start off my presentation with an excursus. And that is a statement: everything we do needs to feed back into our core competences. This is a statement which was given to me in the frame of an interview I conducted with the university management at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. And I found this statement quite interesting, as this concept of the core competences and the societal role of universities has changed over time. When you think back about the first universities in the 11th, 12th century, they have been educational institutions, mainly having the purpose to educate a very selected group of people and to serve also the purpose of supporting the prestige of their nation. Then something happened which had a long-term influence on our current university system as well, was the first academic revolution, the Humboldtian University in the 19th century, which put research as a center mission of the university, besides teaching, and academic freedom as a core principle of the university. What we then observe is that after World War II, we have numerous developments going on. On the one hand, a decentralization of higher education institutions, and also an increase in heterogeneity. That means other types of organizations besides universities have been founded. Universities of applied sciences, different types of colleges, but also private universities. And the main expectation from politicians, but also society, was that this university transfer their knowledge into the society for the main purpose of supporting economic development and industrial innovation. And within the last 2 decades, we started to discuss about this third role universities have, this third mission, and we refer to it as the second academic revolution, which means that now in center stage, besides research and teaching, is this topic of knowledge and tech transfer, which is, or which became, an issue for nearly all universities. And what we see here is that these core competences, which have been mentioned before in the statements, they have changed over time. And the universities have experienced numerous organizational but also institutional challenges, and also the landscape, of course, of higher education institution has changed. And this brings me now to the question: what is the role of a modern university in our current knowledge society, which is a topic for the macro level, and for today's talk, what is especially the role for university organization within its siting or location region on the micro level. Here you can see the content, what I plan to talk about. I will approach the regional role from 2 perspectives. I will talk about the role of universities they have due to their mere presence, the effects they have on the region. Then I will also talk about their role from the perspective of activity effects. I will talk about what determinants influence the role a university has, then about the challenges, and here I will also bring in experience from other universities I have studied. I will talk about strategies, how to deal with these challenges, and then I will conclude with some main findings. When we talk about the regional role of a university, we differentiate between two, let's say, well-known roles the university plays due to its presence. That is, the one thing is the university as an economic actor, which is of course happening due to the demand the university raises for certain services and infrastructure, but also of course the investments the university is making, expenses and employment opportunities she's offering. And then there's something which is termed the regional role, that is the effect the university has on the region due to its impact on the participation in higher education on the one hand, and the impact the university has on the region due to the provision with graduates, with so-called high-skilled graduates, often also referred to as human capital. When I talk about activity effects of university, we differentiate to other roles. That's on the one hand the generative role. Here, this is subsumed everything which has to do with knowledge transfer, tech transfer, and entrepreneurship. And the developmental role, this is a very, I would say, a role which refers to the regional engagement of university. That means university and university members participate actively in regional strategic processes. They also participate in certain political decision-making processes, strategy building, and they apply a certain attitude towards leadership. So let's start off now with this presence effect. I mean, which role can a university play for the region when we look at this demand side effects the university is offering or is towards its region? Then we see here that the university, of course, makes investments into the region. It makes investment into infrastructure, into buildings, and so on and so forth. Of course, expenses for personnel, for material, but also, of course, the employees and the students make expenses here who have been attracted by the university. And most often, universities are among the biggest employees within certain regions, especially often in rural regions. Now, these investments, of course, have certain multiplier effects, which have been also studied quite often. And there are numbers which have been confirmed throughout various studies. That is, on the one hand, an income multiplier range between 1.3 to 1.8 as an effect to the region, and on the other hand, also a value creation multiplier in the range of 1.8 to 2.0. Depending, of course, on the size of the region, as well as also of the type of the university. Another important effect is the so-called traditional role. That means locating a university in a rural region has impacts on the number of people thinking about participating in higher education. This was also one of the reasons why in the 1970s, 1980s in Germany, and a bit later, that was the 1990s in Austria, a high number of decentralization happened. Because there are results that more inhabitants consider participating in higher education when there is an opportunity nearby. But of course, geographical proximity is not the only precondition. You also need a certain kind of social proximity, which is very much influenced by the parents, or let's say the education level of the parents. And there have been recent studies also by the IHS who confirm that children from parents with a high school certificate, with a Matura certificate, have a twice as high probability to participate in higher education as children of parents who have a lower school degree or school level or education level. And what you can see here, I included here a map which shows this this also spatial disparities of people in the age 25 to 64 holding such a middle or high school degree. And you can see here that there is quite a high percentage in Lower Austria, but there are also several communities with a rather low percentage of people in this age with a high school degree, which then of course has also impacts on this participation of their children in higher education, in tertiary higher education. What influences also the participation in higher education is the offer of study programs in the city, but also the region and federal province of origin. And therefore, the more comprehensive the offer of study programs in the federal province of origin, the higher the probability often the students stay. That means here also the university play a role, or they also have an influence on how many students stay in their federal country and how many leave perhaps towards other cities or federal states, federal provinces. In Austria, it is the case that around 50% of the students begin their studies in Vienna. On the second position is Styria, and on the third position is Upper Austria. And I again put here a graph that are current numbers from first semester students from the winter term 2019-2020 at public universities. And what I highlighted here is the situation for Carinthia. What you see here is that many students, 500 students, start their studies here in Klagenfurt. More, 535 start in Graz, and 258 start their studies in Vienna. What you can also see in this graph is that besides Lower Austria and Burgenland, who does not have a public university, in all other federal provinces, the number is for first semester students is the highest in the country in their federal country of origin. And when we look at who is studying here in Klagenfurt, then you see that the number of Carinthian students is rather high, also followed by some students from Styria, but only low numbers of students from other federal provinces. When we combine this information with the forecast for the population development, which of course you know is negative for Carinthia, you see that there is some kind of a need for a strategy how to attract students in the future, how to perhaps how to think about attracting which students, how about international students, for example. And this is a topic I will also tackle later on in my talk and show you also examples of other universities who had really the same starting preconditions as here Klagenfurt had. And offer perhaps interesting insights also for you to think about. Now, let's continue with this traditional role. I said that are effects that occur due to the mere presence of the university. And besides increasing the participation in higher education, a second very important effect is the provision for the region with highly skilled people, with highly skilled graduates. They are referred to as the most important channel of knowledge transfer, as they bring this academic knowledge into the industry, but also into public administration and other public authorities. It has also been observed that these graduates in the regional economy and also regional public institutions, they increase the absorptive capacity for academic knowledge and also for innovation. Studies have confirmed that the willingness to move is the highest after graduation. That means if a region is interested in keeping their people, then the time of graduation is the point where you have to act. Generally, it is lower to migrate out, the chance is lower for those graduates who have studied in their federal country of origin or their city of origin. And it is also lower for students of applied sciences than for university graduates. and also technical studies, social studies have a lower probability to migrate out than graduates from technical studies who are known to be more mobile. When we look at the 3 most important reasons to stay in your region, then it is the adequate workplace, adequate in the sense of the level where you start your first job, but also with regard to income and career prospects. The image is a very important factor, and then also, of course, the distance to your place of living. And here what has been found out, and that I think is also an important point where the university can make a contribution, is the information. It has been perceived in studies in Austria, but also Germany, that there is really a big lack of information about job opportunities, the correct information. We have found out that there are a lot of stereotypes going around, or opinions going around, which have no objective basis. That means here I would also see it as an important task for the university to play this regional role in the sense of providing information about job opportunities also here in the region. Now we have talked about these 2 roles which the university fulfills due to its mere presence. But the roles which have increased in interest in academia, but also from policymakers, are the 2 which refer to the activity effects. That is this generative role and the developmental role. The generative role, as I said before, it's about providing knowledge in response to a certain demand. Most often, this role is referred to as the entrepreneurial role, where we talk about commercializing knowledge and transferring it to industry via R&D corporations, but also patents. And there are 2 models we talk about which focus especially on this role, and that's the entrepreneurial university. I'm sure you have heard about that, but also the Triple Helix University is another example. When we talk about the developmental role, that is a more holistic approach towards the role of universities for the region. And here we talk about that the university adapts research, teaching activities, and other knowledge transfer activities to regional needs. And that the university itself establishes itself as a regional actor. That means the participation also in regional strategy processes, and also the creation of interregional relationships. That means the university becomes an actor in regional development. You see here examples of these 2 roles. As I mentioned, it's the Triple Helix model and the entrepreneurial university for the generative role. And I brought here also evidence from the University of Twente, who calls itself an entrepreneurial university. And on the other hand, the Sustainable University and the Engaged University are 2 models which refer to this developmental role. And here you can see there's a picture from the Leuphana University, which is well known as, let's say, as a best practice example for a sustainable university. Now, what do these roles mean in practice? What do they entail? And which organizational changes does a university need to undertake to establish as such, or to take on this role? You see here the entrepreneurial university. Here the economic mission is at the core, and the focus is really on the commercialization of knowledge. Most often technological universities take on this type of regional role. What happens here when we look at the organizational change? Most often transfer units are founded. The scientists make a normative change or also cultural change towards entrepreneurial scientists. It is not anymore a general mission in university perceives, but more an economic mission, and the commercialization is part also of the evaluation and Leistungsvereinbarungen, if you wish. The Triple Helix University is rather similar, only with the difference that here also government is, besides industry, an important partner in in establishing this role and establishing this economic focused image. When we look on the other hand on the engaged university or also sustainable university, they are also rather similar to these two models. We see here that the regional focus enters all parts of the university. It plays a role in teaching, in research, and also in other outreach activities. And also here again, what kind of organizational changes need to take place to become this type of university. The regional focus has to enter the strategy of the university. It has to enter teaching and research. Transdisciplinarity is a very important characteristic in this type of model. That means transdisciplinarity in the sense of collaborating with regional actors, but also with other scientific disciplines. And the university takes over a boundary spanning role. The sustainable university is rather similar, only with the difference that here it's not only about regional demands and regional focus, but especially also on this, the focus is on these sustainability issues, which enters also all parts of the university. And the university sees itself as an important actor to support also sustainable regional development. We conducted here a study for the University of Augsburg and the Johannes Kepler University in Linz. And what was the core research question is, what role does the university play to support sustainable regional development? And what we did here, we started back in the 1990s, and via document analysis and interviews, we tried to find out which kind of developments in the region have been influenced by the universities, foundation of new platforms, or they supported the local agenda there, for example, but they participated also in certain political steering bodies. And via these different activities, they have been able to support this sustainable development agenda, which was also, of course, there a strong political agenda. And what we could observe interestingly here is that not only the university had an impact on the region via interacting with these different stakeholders, but also it has been influenced, of course, by activities taking place in the region or also on the national level. And we, as you can see here, we differentiated different impacts, institutional changes, that means changes of norms, values, and regulations on the one hand, and also organizational changes in the sense that new organizational units have been founded, new study programs have been set up, and so on and so forth. Just an example how this, I would now say that this is more the engaged type of the university role in its region with a focus in this sense on the sustainability topic. And this is just an example to show you how this can be, how it can look like in reality. Now this has been now quite theoretically a part of the presentation. In reality, of course, you do not see the one or the other role. Most often, universities apply a mixture of these roles. And nonetheless, which role is followed, it can have a different impact on the region and a different impact also on regional development, and we refer to as agency. That means the university can be an innovative entrepreneur. That means that is the first level of agency. They transfer knowledge, commercial or non-commercial, into the region to initiate innovation. The second type of agency is institutional entrepreneurship. That means the university makes internal changes, structural, organizational, but also normative and cultural ones. And the last and third level is level of agency is the active leadership role in regional strategies and networks. So we have now heard about these different roles. Now, who is who is deciding which role a university takes on? What we have seen in studies is that often in rather similar regions, at least from outside, universities play totally different roles or establish totally different roles. What influenced these roles? First, it has to be said that every university region setting is rather unique, but that the geographical proximity between the university and its surrounding is not the only precondition which influences this role. There are other types of proximity which are needed, and I will refer to this later on. And it's also not self-evident that the university establishes a regional role. That's also, I think, important to say. Now, there are three determinants or three areas of influence which have impact on the role of a university. That is, on the one hand, regional factors, organizational factors, and the so-called institutional framework. What are regional factors? What is often mentioned and what has also been confirmed is the characteristic, of course, of the regional economy. That means size of the firms, focus of the firms, R&D affinity, a so-called cognitive proximity. And it is, of course, also proven that when graduates start to work in the regional economy, they increase this absorptive capacity for academic knowledge. It means they increase also this cognitive proximity between the university and the regional economy. The second one is regional network structures. Is there something like other regional networks? Is the university seen as an actor who should participate in this network? And is there something called organizational proximity between the organization and other important organizations, authorities, public and private actors in the region? Is there political support for the university when they want to establish or develop the campus? When there is a need for new infrastructure, do they get support here from the local or also federal province politicians? And then another important influencing factor is the number of other higher education institutions, because I would say it's a form of healthy concurrence or healthy competition. And those universities where there are also other higher education institutions, that might be universities of applied sciences, private universities, they often showed a higher interest in establishing as regional actor, as in those cases where only one higher education was, because they did not have the pressure to do so. But when there have been numerous of them, they all wanted to have their standing and their saying within their region. The second influencing factor is, of course, organizational factors. That is, on the one hand, the type. Is it a technical university or a full university? Is it a research-oriented or more teaching-oriented universities? And here, of course, it's the case that technical universities most often also establish as entrepreneurial universities. What also affects this regional role is the history. What has been the reasons to found these universities and who was supporting the foundation process? Most often, after World War II, foundations are more regional oriented than older universities, as they have also been founded with this expectation to spur regional development. And then, of course, the profile and the self-perception of the university itself, which is highly influenced, of course, by university management and leadership. And last not least, also the institutional framework, of course, influences the university. That's the regulatory framework on the one hand, but also the focus of finance and funding programs. For example, now sustainability is becoming an issue for all universities as it has entered the new Leistungsvereinbarungen. Therefore, also this kind of developments on a more, I would say, macro level influence, of course, these organizational change processes on the organizational level. And last not least, the norms within each academic profession. There are professions where it is not legitimated or also not seen as scientific to make more applied research or also to work together with regional actors. That is not the true research, so to say, that therefore also these kind of norms, of course, influence this role the university takes on. So, having said that, we now come to the more practical part of the presentation, where I also would like to show you some empirical evidence. And here, when you look at this list, it's not a comprehensive list, but I think it tackles the main issues universities, especially in rural regions, are confronted with. That's the first thing, is profiling and image as a university, and the focus of the university versus the demands of the labor market, which are perhaps also raised. Attraction of student and staff is often an issue, and of course the number, at least a certain number of students, a certain number of income students, is important also to have the legitimacy to be here as a university. Then often it is an issue, this balance between being international, being regional, and also the discussion or between academic excellence on the one hand and societal engagement. They are not to be seen as contradictions, but more as two endpoints of a scale. And then, of course, what is often also a challenge for the university is the image of the region they are located in, which also affects then, of course, their own profiling and image building. And now I would like to show you two examples of universities with their challenges, and also showing you some strategies, how they dealt with these strategies and how they established their regional role. One is the Technical University of Kaiserslautern. I visited in 2018 as a guest researcher for a couple of months. And I was investigating, this was also the topic of my stay there, to investigate their regional role, how it has established, what kind of factors influenced it. It is also a post-World War II foundation, founded in 1969. It was, on the first hand, it was a double university together with Trier. And the main reason by that time to found the university was to provide education opportunity for vocational teachers, and the second one to provide development aid for the region. Because it was a very structurally weak region, it has also suffered from deindustrialization and economic crisis. And therefore it was also the political expectation that the university is becoming a job motor and innovation motor. It's regarding the size, the university has 4,500 students, but of those 5,000 are distance learning students. That means they will see the campus there once or twice in their life. All the other things they do online. The focus is technical with 12 departments and including also a big social and economic science department. What have been the main challenges of the University of Kaiserslautern? They had attraction of students was a big issue for them. There was a German-wide decline of students in the 1990s, and they were, of course, also in competition with other very renowned and well-known technical universities. Their problem was that the offer they had for study programs attracted mainly male students, with the consequence that a lot of female inhabitants migrated out to Karlsruhe, Heidelberg, or other study locations nearby. And the city of Kaiserslautern had a lack of image. Yeah, it was not known as a student city, because their problem was that they call it in German Waschmaschinenradius, and I translated it into washing machine radius. That means that the students came there from, they lived, let's say, in 1 to 2 hours from the university, which means that they never lived in Kaiserslautern, but they moved back to their hometown, to their home community, and with the consequence that there was never a student life growing in the city. Another challenge was that the regional labor market was not able to absorb these highly skilled graduates from these different study programs, as due to the deindustrialization, there was no industrial basis there which could provide them with any jobs. And it was also a challenge that they have been permanently under pressure by politicians to really put more effort into bringing the economy further or establishing new industries in the region. Now, what did they do? With regard to incoming students, what they did is they founded a distance learning center in 1920, and right now 20% of their students, on the one hand they found this distance learning center which has which offers 17 international English-speaking graduate programs, and here should be a bullet point. Right now what they did on the one hand is they established the distance learning, but also the international focus. That means they really established several English-speaking study programs, which now 20% of their students participate in. They strengthened their social and economic related study programs, which then also attracted more female students. And what they also did, they established various connections with partner universities to allow for double degrees, but also to switch their studies easily. And of course, they worked on the image, which is a very important factor when you want to attract students, especially from abroad. And this was mainly done via their excellence orientation and via the support also of the city government. The strategy, what regards profiling and excellence, they try to attract well-known and honorable research institutions from the 1980s onwards, and which also supported them to establish close relationships to the regional industry, but also to found their own university spin-offs. Kaiserslautern is among those universities who have the highest number of student entrepreneurship. That means they have not been able to find a working place there, therefore they founded their own business, and that worked pretty well there, especially for the field of ICT. They are, of course, the collaboration with this institute that have been Fraunhofer Institute, but also Max Planck Institutes. They increased the research output, and which also made them visible in rankings, international rankings, which is becoming a more and more important factor when it's about image building. And of course, the spin-off creations I already mentioned, and entrepreneurship, which they really became famous for throughout Germany. And then, of course, also a professionalization and institutionalization of these connections to the regional economy and industry via tech transfer services and tech transfer offices. And last but not least, the university became very active in, on the one hand, participating in clusters. For example, the metal, the engineering textile cluster, but they also started their own cluster. That's a software cluster there, which is now I would say, located throughout whole Western Germany and also well known. But they also initiated important networks with public and private actors like the Science Alliance or Diemersteiner Kreis, where they really talk about the regional strategies on how to support the further economic development. And here they also work together with other higher education institutions. And what they also did is that there is organizational unit within the university. It's called the Hochschulkuratorium, the Board of Trustees. And here they integrated local policymakers, but also actors from, I would say, different public and private authorities, and private bodies, to work on a joint regional agenda. That means what became really visible there is that the university was not only taking into account her own problems and challenges, but she got a feeling also for the challenges of the region, the regional policy, and also regional businesses. And by working together, it strengthened also the role of the university in the region, and it also helped them to deal with their own challenges. Because, for example, the regional labor market, that was an issue also there, that many of the graduates also did not know enough about the local and regional labor market, and therefore they migrated out or they founded their own spin-off. That means they really tried to work together on certain hot topics for their region and for themselves. The second example I would like to talk about is the University of Twente. The University of Twente is located in the east, on the eastern border to Germany. It was also founded around the same time in 1964 as one of three Dutch, as we have three Dutch technical universities. The University of Twente is one of them. And also they, of course, have been expected to support economic development, as there has also been a crisis of the industry, especially also the textile industry by that time. And what is really special about the University of Twente is that they had a rector in 1985, Van Gronenberg, and he rebranded by that time the university as an entrepreneurial university. This was a rather innovative idea by then, because it was the time when especially applied research and the commercialization of academic knowledge was not something very mainstream. It was rather at the beginning to establish this idea. It is a bit smaller than the University of Kaiserslautern with 9,600 students and 6 departments, including also here a social and economic department besides the technical departments. What have been the challenges at this university? They are rather similar. Also, they had a problem to attract students due to their location really on the eastern border, and also a lack of reachability. It's not really easy to get there. Yeah, it takes. There is no airport nearby, and also the train connection is not so frequent. It is quite a challenge to attract income students. And what is their problem as well is that a lot of students leave after the bachelor degree or the master degree due to the perception that there are better places to be, especially in the western part of the Netherlands. The image of the region is a very rural image, I would say, not a very modern image. And also here a lack of absorptive capacity. Many of the graduates have not been able to find a job there, and also I would say the lack of effective decision making. Also, when you come there is no clear regional strategy. What are our topics? Where do we want to go? That was also a challenge for the university to establish itself and to establish its regional role. Now what they did, also it seems rather there are some parallels also to the developments in Kaiserslautern. Also they focused on excellence, because they said the only thing we can compete with is when we establish areas in which we can show that we are excellent, and that also influences then our image and helps us to attract students, at least for these fields. And here it was the case that they really established scientific excellence and also cutting-edge research in medical technology, telematics, nanotechnology, and tissue engineering. And they also founded several institutes which have applied institutes with this respective focus. Another thing was the TOP program, the Temporary Entrepreneur Scheme, a program which has been also supported by public authorities. And they established a business and science park with a strong commitment to entrepreneurial activities. And therefore also here in Twente, it is, the university has the highest number of student entrepreneurship and spin-off creation throughout the Netherlands. Also this was a way, that was the way they chose to go. Another one is that due to the lack of this industrial basis, the university supported the establishment of new industries, also here, especially in ICT, and they actively participate in strategic regional development. They are members in the Twente board, but also the mayor set up a scientific board where all of the higher education institutions participate in to also influence what is going on in their community and the region as such. And together also with regional businesses, they now set up a new strategies to attract students. On the one hand, they want to use their alumni to make more advertising and marketing for the university, but also they started to send out newsletters to graduates throughout the world to inform them about what is going on in the Twente region, because they also think that this lack of information is one major issue which prohibits the coming back of these graduates. as you can see here, that the summary, to summarize now the strategies these two case study universities have undertaken, we see that on the one hand they have established themselves as innovative entrepreneurs. That means they have really institutionalized and professionalized the commercialization of academic knowledge, and also supported the foundation of student spin-offs, but also participated in clusters. At the same time, and besides that, they have undertaken organizational changes within the university. That means new organizational units have been established. They have also changed their strategies towards internationalization on the one hand, but at the same time, and not contradictory, also taking on a very active regional mission. And also establishing coalitions and partnerships with other universities to make themselves more attractive. And last not least, both of them took on a quite active leadership role. That means they participated in regional strategic processes, developing the new strategy for the region of Twente, which is not their core competence, I would say, but which of course also affects them positively when there is also a success going on there. And often they enacted a bridging role. That means the university are on the one hand multi-scalar organizations, and often they are very well able to bring different actors together which would perhaps not meet in other situations, and talk about and bring also in new relevant themes that might be topics of digitalization. It was the other topic of sustainability. That means university have also this role of bringing new, also international relevant topics into the region. What is important here is that who can, of course, now bring this forward or establish this regional role. In all of these cases, there have been very highly motivated individuals. That might be department leaders, institute leaders, who are motivated and engaged, and who have also certain resources, or at least a certain power due to their position to make change happen. On the one hand, you need the support of the university management, who make these activities mainstream, or at least who support them with certain financial opportunities. And of course, you also need a regional environment which allows the university to play this active role. That means that allows for a joint governance also here in the region. Now some concluding remarks. I would say that the regional role is a deliberation process between various missions and roles the universities can or should have, or is expected to have. Of course, and I know that the region is only one of many levels the university is active at, especially universities are also international organizations. And I also would say that this regional focus is also only one of many perspectives the university has. But nonetheless, I also think that in order to be successful as a university, you need to establish a certain kind of proximity to your regional environment, because this collaboration can end up in a win-win situation. And what you have seen in the two examples I have shown you is that the university has been very active in shaping this proximity to its regional environment, which then also affected them positively. Now I say thank you for listening, and yeah, I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much for this extremely interesting talk. Are there questions? So maybe I may start with a question. So you said that excellence building is extremely important for rural universities, and certain focus, right?
Profiling, yeah.
So I wanted to ask, in your opinion, what would be the role of a focus on the ICT and the technical programs and like the technical sciences as a whole in Carinthia? So would you say that this is good idea to focus on this because we have quite some excellence in that direction, but I feel like that this is not so visible yet. So I have the feeling that so the University of Klagenfurt is not seen as a technical university. Also, the faculty is not really growing over the years. So what would be your recommendation?
I mean, from what I've said, I mean, I've shown you 2 examples from a technical university, and I know that the Klagenfurt University is not a technical university, although it has a technical faculty. I think what is important here is that as a university you can do one part, but you would also need, in order to make this excellence visible, you would also need quite strong cooperations. I mean, you have the Lakeside Park here as well, and I read that they also have a Fraunhofer Institute since last December, October, November, since last year. That means that are also institutions which bring a certain kind of prestige, of course, also with them. I do agree that, I mean, the entrepreneurial university and the creation of spin-offs and patents is still the, I would say, the most prestigious regional role a university can take. Therefore, I mean, for the University of Klagenfurt, I think, yes, I think excellence here makes sense. But I think you cannot do it as a university alone. You would need to establish strong university industry cooperations. You need to, I mean, I saw your rankings, which are not that bad, I would say. I think it's more about communicating also this excellence. And it's also about, when we talk about, when I think about innovative entrepreneurship and these other types of agency, I'm not sure if the university is also visible yet as an actor here. I think you will also have to work more on this leadership role in the region to become also more visible. Because now I think there's a big process going on with this rural development strategy for Carinthia, or is it's called the regional development strategy. And I think there the university is not present at all. I think it's a Fachhochschule who is contributing to that. Therefore, I think that it would be also more important to be visible in these activities. Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. Are there further questions? Yes.
So thank you very much also from my side. You brought up very many interesting points. Well, you talked about many interesting points. Of course, it's hard to paint a picture where, you know, I'm not even talking about causality, where correlation is already really becoming sort of visible. What is the driver? Because it's all very complex and it's all very entrenched. One thing that I didn't see much, and I cannot phrase it in probably the right words that would be used in your field, would be, I would call it something like self-esteem. So basically, like say, you can say now, look, I have, this was going in the direction of Michaela's question, look what I've done for you, look what I can do for you, look at all these pluses that we get, and look at, you know, and I can measure them, or I can at least point them out in slides and so on. And the question is always, and you know, could there be a place, could there be a strategy also in your, could that be a factor also in your success cases, or at least in your case study that you point, where they were having a change of what can you do for us? You know, a type of attitude, a type of, you know, is that something that you could somehow see there? Or was it really along the lines of, we have improved there, we've improved in the visibility, and then they saw us and now we are more successful? I mean, coming from institution, I don't know, I don't know, it's like an attitude. When I walk into Chicago booth, I get a lot of these. They are good. That's all a prerequisite anyway. But they also have this type of, you know, attitude that is sometimes justified and sometimes not. Also, my former institution, the VU, they have this kind of attitude, whether it's justified or not. You know, they don't care. So I think this is something that is probably hard to measure, but I think it's very important in terms of the long-term or mid-term chance. An institution that is in principle reliant on sort of, you know, government money has a hard time, a much harder time than an institution that I was just mentioning from the US. So I think this is an important factor. I can only tell you that I think it is without having any data, without having any knowledge about that. Thank you.
But what do you think, what nurtures this self-esteem? Do you think it is by their location or by their success they had so far, or by what is talked about them also in their environment influences their perception of themselves?
I don't know what the reason is. It's just there. You feel it. Immediately you go in, you feel it. It's a different setting. It's there somehow. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know how to do it. I'm not sure whether it's coming from being even better at presenting your results, being even, more.
Yeah,
I think it's one part. But
yeah.
I don't know if I could make myself clear, but I think it's something that has to be instrumentalized somehow on all these measurements. I think it is important. It can be. You could even call it bragging. I don't know. You could even say it's maybe something that is not justified. But I think it is an important thing, whether you want to look at it or not. That really plays a role when it comes to visibility, when it comes to funding, when it comes to coolness, when it comes to, it is there, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. But I mean, the two examples I've shown you, both universities, they started from scratch. That means there was nothing like image or a profile they had. But what I think what was interesting there, what they did is they approached the issues from various perspectives, and they approached it holistically. Yeah, and they have been, of course, no one is going to Twente if you do not know. At the same time, it's also nice to be there as a student. It has a certain image. That there are many factors influencing the decision if you come here. Besides the fact that you know that you're having excellence there in certain areas, and therefore you think that also you can expect the excellent education there. And it's also, if you can say that you come from Twente, that also the employers know what that means. And that is an important issue. I think the profiling is important together with the image where you are, and that are all issues I think you cannot only work on alone as a university. Yeah. But I think when you talk about the WU or other universities in bigger cities, they have a certain kind of a starting advantage. Yeah. I think that here also the location, you have to work harder when you are more decentralized to come to this point, as when you are located in a main or capital city. Yeah. Yes, please.
Thank you for your talk. I agree completely. So let's start with the question. We see a really strong competition between the various regions in order to attract students. Because of we see a severe shortage with respect to students in technical sciences. So the regions are competing to attract students, especially in technical sciences. So how would you comment on the project to have a new technical university in Upper Austria?
In Upper Austria?
Yeah. TU Linz.
Oh, it's hard. It's heavily discussed.
Yeah. So I mean,
when I give an answer, it's more a political answer than
is it a good idea for Upper Austria to do so or not? Or?
I mean, when I look at their numbers, and when you look at Linz, most of their students also they start. I mean, there's always been this competition with Vienna, but I think they have. They have the FH, which is which has a good standing there. The FH Hankberg with their studies, also in the technical and ICT sciences. If I think it's a good idea.
In order to attract more students in the technical sciences. This is, I think, is the goal.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you because there is this ongoing demand also of the labor market to attract these people. On the other hand, I do not think that there is how shall I say? I think that Austria has a quite well-established offer also of technical universities. I do not know the numbers by heart. If everyone who wants to start there can also have a study place. I do not know that. I mean, with Linz, it has always been special. Also, the JKU there, to found the JKU, also the nation state did not want them to have the Johannes Kepler University. It was only due to their active participation in the 1970s, or the city and the federal government working together, that they got the JKU. Also the medical department was a big discussion there. I cannot answer your question if it makes sense or not, as I also do not know the numbers there. But so far as I know, I mean, what their issue always has been that a lot of students migrate to Vienna or go to Vienna to study on the technical university. And I know that, and only a partial amount of them stays in Linz to study or in Hagenberg to study at FH. Therefore, I think it is a strategy for them to keep their own people there. Yeah. To have this, as I mentioned before, this comprehensive offer in their own federal province in order to keep the people there, because of course they know that after the graduation, when they are in Vienna, they might also start a first job there, and that is then the big issue they want to avoid. Therefore, from their point of view, I can understand it. From general point of view, if it makes sense or not, I cannot answer it.
Okay.
What is your thought about that?
Yeah, so my point is, if JKU would have been successful, to attract enough students in technical sciences, nobody would talk about TU Linz.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
Yeah. The question is how then they will succeed if JKU has not made it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But what does this tell us for Carinthia? I mean, we are in the same position, more or less. The exception is that the province of Carinthia is not as wealthy as Upper Austria. And in, I don't know, in 5 or 4 years, we will have the Coalm tunnel.
I mean, I had an interview in 2014 with one representative from the federal government from Carinthia. I was studying the Universities of Applied Sciences by that time, and he said one of the major issues Carinthia had is that it is more of a Bauchladen. He really used this term. I do not know how to translate it in English, but what he said is the issue of Carinthia is the profiling, and I think that is the main thing. That's the main point. That you are really getting known for 1, 2, or 3 very particular topics, excellent disciplines, or let's say having the focus there, which makes you very well known, let's say throughout Austria, or also in the best case internationally. And if that is a technical university, I don't know. As you say, it is also a question if it is realizable. And also as a technical university, you would have to establish the image to be able to compete with the others who are there for a much longer time, especially also in Styria or Vienna.
So what are your recommendations? So let me just explain the current state.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So we have a local government which is short on money. I'm not sure if the Austrian government is willing to send more money to Carinthia. I don't expect this. Yeah, so we have a Fachhochschule and we have a university which has a great technical faculty, but actually the university is not seen as a technical university. So it's not associated with technical sciences currently, not so much. And we have a high demand of the labor market in graduates from technical sciences. So what should we do in order to attract more students?
I mean, where do these students go who graduate from your technical departments? Do they stay here? Do you know about that?
Most of them,
That means although you have this education, it is not enough yet.
Yeah, we are not able to attract, we mean
Yeah.
Carinthia as a whole, we are not able to attract enough students for technical sciences in order to satisfy the demand. Yeah.
I mean, under this situation of a low budget, the first strategies which do not cost that much, are strategic partnerships with other universities to to offer certain degrees together. I'm not sure if there is.
We
I
have
have no idea if there is the willingness to.
We have double degree programs with Italy, with Udine,
Yeah.
for example.
How are they accepted?
Yeah, we started with this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so can't tell this until now. So we started this in
Yeah.
this academic year. Yeah.
I think that is the first thing. The second strategy, I can only tell what I've seen, is internationality. Focus also on English-speaking programs, yeah, because they are also then very attractive for income students from abroad, which might then stay here or might also leave, of course. There you do not have, of course, the guarantee.
But this means that the university as a whole must have an excellent reputation, right?
For internationality.
Yes.
I think in the case of Austria, it's enough if you offer English-speaking programs, because here we are not that good. So right now, who offers English-speaking degrees? It's the private universities, most often. Therefore, I think that is a niche what the public universities have not focused on so much so far. That is one thing, and the other is then also awareness building in the secondary schools for an academic study in this MINT. I mean, you do not have the N, but in the MIT study programs, I think that is also very important, because what are people going to study? I mean, what they have perhaps heard in their families, what they have seen, many of them have really not a lot of information, and therefore I think awareness raising in the secondary schools is also an important issue to make people aware of these opportunities. That means internationality, strategic partnerships, and because I think that are measures which do not cost so much so far, yeah, and they also bring students, and I think then the image is something which then also comes with itself, and may then also, and then I think when you have a certain level of image, of a really good image, it's easier also to negotiate for further money and investments. That's are the first three things which come to my mind on the basis of that, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any further question?
I would like to be put on the list as well.
So,
Sorry?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it my turn?
Yes?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this really, really fascinating talk. There are lots of issues which we could discuss, which I would be interested in. So I'm going to single out some aspects. The one is this issue of profiling, and the two examples you presented in more detail were two examples of technical universities where I think it's much easier to find a very clear profile, which would not work for a university which has a much larger spectrum of fields. For example, with this entrepreneurial university, you would just not manage at all to integrate the humanities, and we have very strong humanities at our university. So in this sense, I think that for a university with such a wide spectrum of fields, it's much more difficult to do. So maybe Leuphana would be interesting, could teach something there. So that's one of the issues where we'd be interested to hear more, maybe about the example of Leuphana. The other one is that I think we have a paradox. We have a paradox in the sense that as scientists and teachers, we all now know that we're all in international competition. Universities are in global competition with respect to the rankings and so on. At the same side, we want to communicate to students in Carinthia, you can get all you need here at our university, and then you could stay where you've always been. And we know that this is not necessarily the best thing for the region as such in the long term, because of course we also need some international exposure for the people, for the job market, and so on. So in this sense, I think it might be interesting actually to reflect on giving the impression, but also working on a strategy where we could communicate if Corinthian students, graduates come to our university, then they will get international exposure just by being with us, and that of course is only possible if we have this very, very good international reputation, and if we have international staff as well, and we have been hiring, of course, in this vein. And also, of course, to also offer English language study programs. I think that's very interesting. Maybe a third point, I think when you look at the German situation, then the funding comes from the Länder.
Yes.
So that's a very, very different situation from Austria, where when you have a regional strategy, you do have the region which is also providing the resources. And now you're presenting us with a whole number of strategies, which I thought were very interesting. But somehow one could think that most of these strategies actually could be implemented without extra funding. So I would like to ask you also to say a bit more about where could those funds come from when exactly we already know that they won't come from public regional funds or only to a very limited degree. Thank you.
Okay, lots of questions. First of all, I agree that for a technical university, it's quite easy to go towards this entrepreneurial university model. And I also think that for a more comprehensive university, also if not full, or full university, an example like the Leuphana University is much more interesting. Yeah? I mean, they have really chosen this very strong sustainability focus, and they implemented it in all 5 aspects. This means management of the university, teaching, research, outreach, and also this the ongoing, let's say, ongoing things, also the EMA certifications, things like that for the ongoing Betrieb of the university. What they did there very consequently is that they, first of all, they taught their staff members what does sustainability mean, how can they incorporate it into these different pillars, and they also became very engaged also in the region to support sustainability transformation projects, also together with politicians and with industries there, to bring in new standards, green standards, whatsoever. Therefore, I agree that also it is not so easy for a comprehensive university to go towards the entrepreneurial pathway. But what we also see is that many universities do not choose the one or other role, and the question is also, is it necessary to be entrepreneurial or engaged or to call yourself like this? I think most often also mixed models occur. That means they have a technical department which is very much focused on these entrepreneurial activities, also to support spin-off creations. We also have this case at the Boku University with a biotech who really do a lot to support these biotech spin-offs going out from Boku, whereas the rest of the other departments is not so much interested in this entrepreneurial focus. Therefore, I think that below one umbrella, different roles can be taken. The second main question, because I think the other were mainly comments, was how to finance these regional activities, or if I got you correctly. Many of the strategies there, like this building of new alliances, I'm not sure if that is so cost intense, at least not to my knowledge. I mean, of course, they had the opportunity there that due to the strong industry cooperations, a lot of money was coming also from industry to support certain excellence initiatives, to support certain activities. But when it comes to establishing this networking role in the region, that had a lot to do with negotiation and also being interested in what is going on and taking an active role as a university. And I'm not sure if this is so much cost intense, to be honest. It is more about making yourself visible as an actor and also showing interest for other issues which are going on. For example, in Kaiserslautern, it was a main issue that they were always dealing with these incoming students. And it was for them, they were not so much interested where these graduates started to work. As for them as a university and for running the business, it doesn't matter if the graduates stay in the region or if they go abroad. But then the region told them, if you want us also to support you with image building, establishing the student cities, you also have to support us with this aspect, and so that the graduates are informed about local businesses, about certain job opportunities. And then they started to broaden their perspective, I would say. Also, not focusing anymore only on their own things, which have to do with themselves, but broaden their perspective also towards other issues of the regional environment. And I think that that helped a lot there, yeah, to make this image building as a whole, because I think that is nothing the university can do on its own, or only partially on its own, yeah. Have I answered the question at least? Yeah, thank you.
So as I saw it, like I haven't been here for too long, but as far as I realized, an issue is that companies would give money to the technical sciences, at least here, but the question is in which form we can take this money. So if they, for example, fund a Förderprofessur, then okay, they fund this professor for 6 years and so on, but then somehow we have to keep the professor, the university has to pay it.
Okay.
So, and then there is this, you know, there are the technical sciences who would get money, and then there are the others who are also, of course, important, and then the university government or the rectorate has to decide on which strategy they go for.
Actually, I agree completely, with your goals, but I think it would be also interesting if you can give the talk to a broad audience in the university. So maybe it would be a good idea to give this talk in the Senate, for example. This would be.
No, that's an important point you mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, because we have the structure we have. And therefore, I think so. First step, I would propose give the talk the Senate. Although maybe some people don't like it, but I think it's worth to do so. And the other point is, I think the transformation process is somehow the biggest problem. I mean, how can you transform an organization which, because of this, which is rather conservative in its structure? I think this is actually would be the biggest problem.
Two important issues, I mean, you can transform on because you want to do so, or because you are expected or under pressure to do so. And I fully agree. I think the most tricky thing here is to go on this profiling or transformation process besides these rector periods or senate periods, where always a change of course of mindsets, of values, of interests takes place. And therefore to guarantee a long-term transformation besides these phases within which this university management bodies operate, I think that is of course a challenge. To establish a certain vision, which is then also valid for the next rectorate. That that is our aim. In 10 years, we want to achieve this, and that it is also something which then people and also the management sticks to.
I mean, it's somehow paradox, because the Senate, is more or less a picture of the past, but not of the future.
That's a very interesting comment.
And the Senate also somehow is very strong in appointing the next rectorate, and also partly the Universitätsrat. So therefore, the big question is how to establish a transformation process with respect to such an environment.
There I can also tell you a paradox. I know that is that the university is a place for learning, but it is, or is an organization for learning, but organization learning is something which is a very hard process for universities themselves, which I also think is an interesting paradox, Are there further questions?
I really think this kind of rounds it up, because I think what you were hinting at was what I was trying to say in other words. And we didn't come up with a strategy now. I think it's exactly it.
Okay.
What can they do for us? And not always what can we do for them. Of course we do a lot. And I think this is where we, in our mindset, have to go. I remember 10 years ago when I was at JKU, that was the big discussion. We had this small statistics program, 10 students, and we had to care about every one of them. And it was like, we always had danger that to be kind of cut off and handed over to whatever, data science, which we've been doing for 30 years, etc. But that doesn't matter because it's not what it is, it's what you sell it, right? And then we changed everything to English. It was very much, everybody was very afraid. Students were like, and so on and so forth. We just did it. And it was just the beginning of, it was a little bit of a jump to the cold water. I don't know if that's an English thing to say, but you know what I mean. And I think some of those things, we are also a little caught up, we were back then a little caught up about our own ideas and about, some preconceived ideas that weren't even the case. And sometimes, even though it's only a few weeks that I've been here, that's everywhere, but it's also here. And sometimes I think we can just dare.
Thank you for the comment.
Are there, yes, there is a further comment.
Maybe one question from a completely different perspective. Have you seen any student projects or things students did which influenced this topic positively in the universities you looked at?
You mean student projects?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in Kaiserslautern, there is this Institute of Geography, and they did a lot of student projects on issues the city had there. And what they have been able is to, besides this entrepreneurial role, to influence, to give the university another touch that it is also able to make or take over this engaged role. For example, they worked on projects to how to deal with the segregation there. They have a big issue with long-term unemployed people, which already in the second generation, they all came from this deindustrialization process which happened there. And the university worked together with the students on these exact regional challenges, how to deal with them, how to organize the living structure so that you do not have ghettos, so to say, in the city, but how can you organize the real estate market so that they are a bit mixed with other people, so to say. That means they have really tried to work very much on topics which have been hot topics for the city government for a long time. Do you mean this? Is it that what you meant? Yeah.
I thought more about projects organized by students, something like funding some clubs who worked with industry firms apart from the studies or something like that.
I mean, there, in both cases, it has been that many students, entrepreneurship is a big topic there. And what they did already when they have been students, they found it like a tech club. Yeah, that people who are have a tech affinity, they came together every Friday evening just to chat, to talk to each other. They often invited a big one from the industry, so to say, to give a short speech, to tell them more about this. They've been, that happened there as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Maybe if there is suddenly a critical mass of doctoral students in some area, they can also act in third mission. It's maybe not a message to you. Any?
Last one, sorry. I think this is a very, very important point. I think what you said is extremely important, and I think that whether it works also for the university, I think depends on whether there are resources. I mean, I know of examples where there was something sort of student-centered and it was tolerated. That's okay. And then there are something where the student standard and it was placed at a very prominent place at a university. It was placed right in front where you enter. The costs are minimal, I would say. Maybe it doesn't change. The costs are high in terms of a structure of mind that it would transformation process and so on. But this would be things I would say, because there is a different energy than saying how can we change the Senate? You know, I mean, it's coming from a different source. It's kind of a very, and I think if there is a spot, if there is a slot, if there is an option that this would be visible, I don't know what exactly it is, but then it would be even powerful for the university, not just look what we do, we are so inclusive. I mean, it gives us something.
I mean, in the cases I saw, it is that the university provided the infrastructure, and I think they worked together with the Hochschülerschaft, who then paid 1 drink per person who is coming to have some kind of incentive. But I think the rest, the rest of the costs of this evening being together, they cover themselves. Yeah. But I think there have been these incentives by providing the infrastructure, a nice room or a student center or whatever, and then this first drink, and I think then it got some kind of it established as a routine. Yeah.
And the mindset there was not, look, you have this, even more, now we have the slot for you, but how can we convince you to do it at the university and not at some other startup somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
That was the mindset this group had.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need all of that,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not Vienna, and we have to live, you know, but I think that's the mindset.
Mm-hmm. Is it an issue here to have this the students organize themselves, or would it be a wish of the university that this happens more?
Well, we are collecting ideas, I dare say.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we also have this washing machine problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But also we have, I mean, what we have is, we do this loosely, let's say, so we have this, for example, in mathematics, we have Mathe in der Praxis, which is students do invite people from industry, talking to them and so on, and networking.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that now it turned out that it must be much more often or much more institutionalized.
Mm-hmm.
Like not once a semester, but
Mm-hmm.
much more regularly.
Regularly, yeah.
I mean, what would be helpful is to have more student life here, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, on paper we have 10,000 students,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but you don't see them.
Mm-hmm.
So I always wonder, where are they?
Mm-hmm.
And this, yeah. I mean, to support this student life, and I also like, I fully agree that we should have more incoming, more international incoming students.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore we changed our study programs
Mhm.
also to English.
Mhm.
So I think we are on the right
On
track.
the right way.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think we are on the
Mhm.
right track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, a lot
Mhm.
still have to be done.
Okay. I think we had a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the talk was of interest. So, Martina, do you have another question, or are you?
Not for the time being. Thank you.
Okay, then I would like to thank you very much
Mhm.
again, also for answering these many questions
Mm-hmm.
and for
Thank
coming
you.
to Klagenfurt.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Mhm.